you believe Kung Fu Panda is just an animated movie about martial arts mixed with jokes, then chances are you missed what truly holds the film together. At first glance, everything seems simple. A clumsy panda dreaming of becoming a Kung Fu master. The action scenes are dynamic, the hits have weight, the animation is polished, and the humor lands. Pacing is light, the choreography is impressive, and the world presented on screen is visually captivating. It's easy to get swept up in that vibrant, entertaining surface. But beneath that accessible layer, there's something much deeper. The story isn't just about fights or training to defeat a villain. The emotional core of the film lies in the experience of someone growing up feeling out of place, but doesn't fit the physical standard, doesn't meet the expectations around him, and most importantly, doesn't believe he deserves the space he longs for. He looks at the Furious Five as fully formed figures, disciplined, confident, secure in who they are. Meanwhile, he sees himself as a mistake in the middle of it all. What the film carefully builds is the feeling of inadequacy, the shame of not measuring up, the fear of constantly being underestimated. Pa isn't just facing a powerful enemy, he's facing the possibility that he might never be enough. Every failed training session, every doubtful glance, every stumble reinforces that insecurity. That's why reducing Kung Fu Panda to a martial arts comedy misses what actually drives the narrative. The journey isn't about mastering impossible techniques. It's about recognizing your own worth when no one else seems to see it. It's about stepping into a space that doesn't seem designed for you, and choosing to stay there anyway. Pa begins the story literally on the outside. He's not inside the temple, not at the center of the action. He's hanging off the edge, peeking through a window, watching a world he has always admired from afar. While the real warriors train, all he can do is observe. The dream exists, but it feels like it belongs to another reality, not his. He looks at that universe the way someone looks at something unreachable, too perfect to touch. And when, unexpectedly, he's thrown into that dream, his reaction isn't celebration. There's no sense of triumph. What comes first is fear, insecurity, the crushing doubt of occupying a space that shouldn't be his. Pa doesn't feel chosen, he feels exposed, as if he's been placed under a spotlight that highlights every flaw he has. The environment around him reinforces that feeling. The skeptical looks, the hushed whispers, the lack of warmth, even the silence carries weight. No one seems willing to believe in him, and deep down, he doesn't believe in himself either. From the very beginning, the film makes it clear that the conflict isn't purely internal. There's a structure around him that doesn't know where to place him. Sometimes you're not the problem, the space simply was never built for someone like you. Pa doesn't have the body you'd expect from a warrior. He shows no real discipline. He lacks physical conditioning, technique, posture. He stumbles, gets winded easily, fumbles through basic movements. And yet, he's given the title of Dragon Warrior. Choice sounds absurd to everyone, including him. And that's where the dilemma becomes clear. How do you deal with the feeling that you've gone too far by mistake? How do you hold your ground in a place you're convinced you don't deserve? He tries to compensate. He pushes himself past his limits. He forces behaviors that don't come naturally. He tries to act like the others, repeat their movements, copy their attitude. But every attempt at imitation only deepens his frustration. The more he tries to squeeze himself into a mold that wasn't built for him, the further he feels from any real progress. The effort is there, but his identity starts to disappear. The shift begins when he stops trying to be a lesser version of someone who already exists. The training changes once it starts taking into account who he actually is. Food, once treated as a weakness, becomes motivation. His lack of elegance turns into unpredictability. His clumsiness stops being a flaw and becomes an advantage. He doesn't learn Kung Fu by reshaping himself to match the masters. He learns when he realizes his traits aren't mistakes that need to be erased. Without long speeches or direct explanations, the film shows that the turning point doesn't come from some hidden ability suddenly unlocking. It happens when Pa stops hiding behind constant comparison. What once looked like inadequacy reveals itself as identity. Power doesn't appear as something external, handed to him by a scroll or a title. It emerges the moment he understands he doesn't need to become someone else to be enough. On the other side of the story is Tai Lung, and he's far more than just the final obstacle. He's the direct result of expectations pushed beyond reason. From a young age, he was told he was special, that he had a grand destiny, that he would be the greatest of all. He wasn't just encouraged. He was conditioned to believe his worth was tied to a specific promise. He didn't grow up trying to discover who he was. He grew up being shaped to fulfill a label. Tai Lung was molded to be the chosen one, trained with intensity, praised for his talent, fed the idea that the Dragon Scroll was practically his by right. Problem is that the promise was never guaranteed, and when it doesn't come true, everything collapses. What was once admiration turns into rejection. The fall isn't just professional, it's emotional. He doesn't just lose a title, he loses the identity he built his entire life around. Tai Lung's prison goes beyond physical chains. It's built from abandonment and accumulated frustration. Years in isolation, trapped not only in a cell but in the memory of a broken expectation. What drives him isn't simple hunger for power, it's the resentment of someone trained to believe he deserved something absolute, only to be treated as a permanent failure when he didn't receive it. He doesn't know how to exist outside the promise that was made to him. His fury doesn't come out of nowhere, it comes from a sense of betrayal, especially toward the one he trusted most. He represents the weight of being conditioned to chase approval above everything else. Someone who spent his entire life trying to live up to a standard of perfection imposed by others. And when he failed, there was no space left for him to rebuild. While Pa begins insecure but free to discover his own path, Tai Lung is trapped in the need to prove he still deserves what was denied to him. It's in that contrast that the narrative finds its strength. Pa grows the moment he stops trying to meet external expectations. Tai Lung falls apart because he doesn't know how to exist without them. The center of this conflict is Master Shifu. He's not just a mentor, he's a key part of both the problem and the solution. He trained Tai Lung with near-obsessive intensity, blending discipline with pride. He saw in him a successor, maybe even an extension of himself. When everything went wrong, Shifu didn't just lose a student, he lost his own sense of certainty. Guilt closes him off. It hardens him. When Po appears as the unlikely dragon warrior, Shifu responds with resistance. It's not just disbelief, it's fear. Fear of failing again. Fear of having invested in the wrong person once more. So he tries to force Po into the same rigid mold he used before. He repeats the methods, the pressure, the pattern, as if insisting on the same formula could somehow fix the past. But gradually, he begins to understand that the issue was never a lack of talent. It was the attempt to control a destiny that couldn't be forced. Shifu learns that teaching isn't about shaping someone into your expectation, but about recognizing what they already carry inside. And that shift doesn't just change Po, it changes Shifu himself. His transformation doesn't happen overnight. Subtle, built through small decisions and quiet adjustments. First, he clings to control, to structure, to the method that once seemed reliable, or at least that he believed was. But as he realizes Po doesn't respond to pressure the way Tai Lung did, something begins to shift. He stops trying to reshape him and starts observing instead. He stops imposing and starts adapting. When the turning point finally arrives, it feels genuine. Shifu learns to teach differently, tapping into what motivates Po instead of trying to erase what makes him different. In doing so, he's not just helping his student, he's freeing himself from his own guilt. Allowing Po to be who he is without cutting away his traits becomes a quiet acknowledgement that he once failed to do the same for Tai Lung. There's no dramatic speech spelling this out. It's in the gestures, the looks, the softened posture. The film succeeds because it shows that masters are still learning too. Authority figures aren't portrayed as flawless beings, but as people doing their best with the tools they have. Shifu carries frustration, regret, and the fear of repeating his mistakes. His growth happens when he accepts that leadership isn't about absolute control. It's about trust. There's no perfection in his journey, only growth. And then we reach the Dragon Scroll scene, visually simple yet narratively decisive. After so much buildup around the secret of unlimited power, what Po finds is nothing more than a reflection. There's no hidden technique, no coded message, no special formula waiting to be unlocked. The shock lies exactly there. The great secret isn't a secret at all. The impact of that discovery goes far beyond simple surprise. Po realizes he spent the entire time searching for something external to validate his place there. He believed he needed some kind of magical confirmation to be worthy of the title. The scroll completely dismantles that idea. The power he was looking for was never locked inside an object. It was in the way he saw himself, or rather, in the way he still couldn't see himself. The entire story builds toward that moment. Every failed attempt, every comparison, every doubt was setting up that realization. What was missing wasn't a secret technique, but recognition. Accepting his own traits, even the ones that once felt like flaws, is what finally allows him to fight with real confidence. That's what truly solidifies Pa as the Dragon Warrior. He doesn't win because he outmatches everyone in strength, speed, or strategy. He wins because he no longer needs to prove he deserves to be there. When he faces Tai Lung, he's not driven by fear of failure or the need for approval. He's steady. And that confidence changes everything. Tai Lung, in contrast, never manages to separate himself from the need for validation. His identity was always tied to the title he believed was rightfully his. Without it, all that remained was emptiness. His defeat doesn't come from a lack of skill. It comes from never learning how to exist beyond the expectations placed on him. In the end, Pa isn't the traditional hero shaped by technical excellence from the start. He's the hero the story required. Someone who proves that value doesn't come from a label, but from self-awareness. Kung Fu Panda doesn't just reinvent martial arts with an animation. Challenges the very idea of achievement. Success here isn't about turning yourself into someone else to fit a standard. It's about realizing that what once felt like inadequacy might actually be your greatest strength. The message isn't about winning despite your flaws. It's about winning because of them. There's no promise of perfection, only recognition, and that's what makes the journey so effective. The film doesn't suggest you need to stop being who you are to reach something greater. It shows that maybe what was missing was never change, just perspective. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to leave a like to support the channel. Thumbs up. And before you go, click the video on your screen right now and keep watching. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.